history, man. So if we close ourselves off to the mystery, we're history. The backwaters, bye-bye, humans. And that's happened before, according to the records. And so anything we can do to keep ourselves open to that mystery, and also recognizing that there'll be some areas that we'll never know. The mystery itself has this allure, It has a magnetic attraction for us. We want to explore it. It draws us out of ourselves. And yet there are also realms that, and Castaneda talks about that in one of his last books, that are not only unknown, but unknowable. Unknowable in principle. We will never know. And to recognize the difference between those two realms can save us a lot of time and trouble. Because if we try to go into the realms that are in principle unknowable, we're likely to get very, very confused.
I need to say that I've taken LSD over 1,000 times.
Just get the microphone or else
I'd like to say something or ask directly about the subject of how to, which you've been discussing. And I'll say it in as quickly a way as possible so you can put your answer together the way you want. Potential problems in taking this. I've said to people, have you taken a lot? Have you ever seen this stuff? And they haven't quite been in the dark. I've gone out, and it's hard to find a place that's dark. There's a lot of lights everywhere.
Well, no, you don't go out. You just close the door and turn out the light.
Then the question is, I talked to Kat a little about this, and she said, no, don't do it in the city. You're absorbing all the vibes of everybody around you.
Well, it's true. We live in the country, but it doesn't have to be pitch. You just take your cone tent and go out to Joshua Tree and up a canyon and...
So you agree with the thing about not taking it in the city?
No, I think it's totally weird to take it in the city.
But
as long as, before we move on, one thing I'd like to say about technique, it may seem small here, but it someday may save you great wear and tear in a tight situation. And that is, if you get into a place in the psychedelic that is difficult, Western people seem to freeze at the controls. And what you need to do is sing and recognize that sound is a tool for pushing energy around. And you can just move past an unpleasant exhibit by chanting your way through it. And all the things that we're taught as spiritual tools, mantra, yantra, mudra, all these things which never work worth a damn most of the time, work perfectly in that state. In fact, that's probably what they were designed for. I mean, all these things are totally frustrating to me, but in the psychedelic state, yantra, mantra, chanting, singing, drumming, as advertised, can move you through these spaces. Let's give somebody else a chance. A woman back here, either Gigi or the lady in the...
It's not on.
It is.
Is it? Yeah. Oh. I just had a question about ritual. You mentioned the Terence method and everything.
Disgraceful, but yes.
Yeah, well, it's good advice. But so I was wondering what other rituals you do repetitively other than just like the normal brushing your teeth kind, but do you...
You mean in my personal life?
Yeah. Is there anything that you do every day or every other, month that you just... I
spend as many hours a day as I possibly can smoking cannabis. This is a practice.
This is the secret of Terence McKenna's philosophy.
Thank you very much.
People,
this is a practice that I've adhered to since my 17th summer. And, God knows if I put in the same amount of time on yoga or writing plays. I also throw the I Ching at the new and full moon.
What are you doing to decriminalize marijuana?
What am I doing to decriminalize it? Well, I always talk about it whenever anybody asks. It's funny how rarely how rarely the subject comes up, even in groups like this. It's almost as though marijuana is the poor country cousin. We're all here talking
like
about
disreputable
5-methoxy, hydroxy, this and that. And the lowly cannabis weed, which has been with us since before the Vedas were a gleam in some Indo-European warlord's eye. It's very interesting how the metaphors of cordage are also the metaphors of creativity, that we weave a story and we spin a yarn. And all the connection between fibers and cognitive processes has always been well understood. I think cannabis has a bum rap. What I'm doing to decriminalize it is being fairly out front about my devotion to it. I just think it's trivial and silly, and it's like trying to outlaw masturbation or something. It has to do with having a torqued notion of human nature. These things exist. I'm not recommending that for everyone, but when I was young, I was what's called a nervous child. And the first time I had a hit of cannabis, I realized that I could self-medicate myself to normalcy and be just like everybody else. And so I did that. And I don't know if it's the proper place to tell it, but once I became concerned that I did too much smoking, and so I decided I would quit. First of all, I wanted to see if I could quit, and then I wanted to see how much of my interior life was actually riding on this ocean of cannabis ingestion. So it so happened that the conditions for the experiment were perfect, because I was arriving on a small desert island in the Seychelles group in the Indian Ocean, and had rented a house on this island in order to write a book. So I had this Mombassan bomber weed and a lid of it, and I just rolled it up and nailed it above my kitchen door and decided that I would not smoke until I had finished writing this book. And was relieved to learn that I had enough self-control that this was possible. I didn't sleep a wink for 8 nights, but I did not resort to breaking my pledge, and I slowly realized it was all right. What it seemed to do was I spent a lot more time reading and had much more interesting dreams, and otherwise it didn't seem to be any big deal. And I wrote this book then, and it took me about 6 weeks, and I promised myself that when the book was finished, I would then allow myself to smoke up this lid of weed before I left this island. So finally I finished, and I was very diligent. I wrote every day at 8 a.m. till noon. I typed, and then I would take my dogs and explore this island. I had this very set regimen. And finally the book was finished, and I rolled these huge bombers and dragged my lawn chair out under the coconut palms and waited for the sunset to get really going, and then I just flared and consumed about 3 of these things in about 5 minutes. And I was just waiting for this sense of relief and accomplishment and clarity to sweep over me, and this thing began to happen, and I pushed it away, and then it came back, and I pushed it away, and finally I realized I had to look at what this was, that it was just becoming overwhelming. And then I looked at it, and what it was the incontrovertible, instantaneous, deep, unarguable realization that this book I had written was dog shit. And I was just frozen just sitting in this chair quaking with this realization. And up to a half an hour ago, I had this vision of myself returning triumphantly to Berkeley like Lenin entering Moscow with the tome raised high.